Pam Bondi just walked into that courtroom acting like she still had power, and within minutes, everything collapsed. A former attorney general, a Trump loyalist, a woman who built her entire career preaching law and order, suddenly exposed as the one destroying evidence, tampering documents and lying under oath. The judge didn't blink. Law license gone. Detention ordered. Path to prison cleared. Observers say the moment she finally admitted the crimes was pure meltdown. Gasps, shock, her own team stunned. And now prosecutors say the case is airtight. And that's when the real betrayal hits, because what she reveals next could blow this entire cover-up wide open.
Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated and give us your opening statement.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify in front of you today. They are a critical reminder of our central mission here at the Department of Justice, protecting the safety and security of the American people.
You know, I keep coming back to this simple, uncomfortable truth. The loudest law and order politicians are very often the ones who treat the law as a costume. They put it on when it's convenient. They rip it off when it gets in the way, and they assume nobody will ever really call them on it. Pam Bondi is one of the clearest examples of that in modern politics, because her story isn't just about one donation or one scandal. It's about what happens when the people who are supposed to defend the public quietly start defending power instead. And when you zoom out, you see exactly why so many Americans look at this system and say, if I did even a fraction of this, I'd be in jail. Why do they always walk away? Let's start with who she is, because that matters. Pam Bondi wasn't some random TV pundit who wandered into politics. She was the top law enforcement official in one of the biggest states in the country, Florida's Attorney General, the person regular people are supposed to call when they're being cheated, defrauded, or bullied by someone more powerful than them. That's an enormous amount of trust and an enormous amount of power, and it comes with a basic expectation. You don't mix that role with personal political favors. You don't put your thumb on the scale for your friends. You don't cash in the badge. But that's exactly the line that started to blur. Because while Bondi was Attorney General, her office was reportedly getting complaints from Floridians about a certain university with Trump's name on it. People were saying they'd been scammed. They'd forked over thousands of dollars for so-called courses and mentorship that turned out to be worthless. Other states were already taking action. New York actually sued Trump University for fraud. So what do you expect from a state that claims it's tough on crime, tough on fraud, tough on protecting consumers? You'd expect the Attorney General to dig in, right? Subpoena records, talk to victims, maybe join the lawsuit. At the very least, keep an arm's length distance from the guy being accused. Instead, something very different happened. Trump's charitable foundation, which is not supposed to be playing politics at all, sends an illegal donation to a political committee supporting Bondi, a $25,000 check.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has spent the last few hours fielding questions from members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's been a tense and confrontational hearing between Bondi and Democratic senators so far. CBS News correspondent Chanel Call has been listening in. Chanel, thank you so much for joining us today. Why is this hearing happening, and what have you heard so far?
Well, hey, Muga, good to see you. So this is an annual Justice Oversight Committee meeting, but it comes after former FBI Director James Comey was indicted by a federal grand jury. So some Democratic lawmakers now accusing the Justice Department of sort of going after people that are perceived to be enemies of President Donald Trump. Attorney General Pamela Bondi, who you see here today, facing some questions about a wide swath of topics, of issues, including her handling of the Epstein files, also the existence of that so-called client list. She was also asked today, Mugo, about the Justice Department hiring January 6ers and the Trump administration's move to deploy National Guard troops to various cities across the country.
Senator, as Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Homan was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors.
The foundation later gets in trouble for it, has to pay a fine, and Trump ends up reimbursing the money because even the tax forms were messed up. And what happens to that potential Trump University action in Florida? It quietly vanishes into the background. The state never joins the case. The people who complained never get their big public champion in Tallahassee. Now, to be clear and fair, investigators never proved an explicit "you pay me, I drop the case" agreement. There was no criminal bribery charge. But this is where ordinary people get furious. And honestly, they're right to be. Because even if it wasn't a crime that could be proved beyond a reasonable doubt, it absolutely shredded the idea that the system is neutral. If you're a random small business owner who breaks a technical rule, you don't get that kind of benefit of the doubt. You don't get a quiet phone call and a chance to make it all go away. If you're a working parent who can't afford a lawyer, you don't get to say, "Oh, sorry, it was just a mix-up with the paperwork." You get penalties, you get collections, you get crushed. Trump writes an illegal check that helps Bondi politically. A major case against him just happens to evaporate in her state. And the only one who really pays a price is the foundation. Not Trump personally, not Bondi, not anyone in power. That's what a two-tiered justice system looks like. Not always people openly stuffing cash in brown envelopes, but 1,000 little decisions that always seem to end up favoring the same small group of people at the top. And Bondi's story doesn't stop there, because after that episode, did she step back and say, "You know what, this looks bad, I should be more careful"? No. She moves even deeper into Trump's political orbit. When Trump runs, she becomes one of his loyal defenders. When he's in the White House, she's there as a cable news surrogate, amplifying his narrative and attacking the investigations surrounding him. When impeachment hits, she shows up as part of his legal defense team, standing on the Senate floor, arguing that he did nothing wrong. Think about that evolution for a minute. This is someone who started as a prosecutor, the person who's supposed to bring cases against powerful people. Over time, she shifts into being a public shield for one particular powerful person. She becomes a symbol of something bigger: law and order for the base, immunity and protection for the king. And that's where the danger to democracy really shows up. Because in a healthy democracy, the law has to float above party. It has to be something that can catch your enemies and your friends. If your whole brand is, "I'm tough on crime," but you go soft whenever crime, or at least unethical conduct, comes from your own side, that's not law and order. That's just partisan muscle dressed up as principle. Bondi's relationship with Trump is a case study in that hypocrisy. When it's about projecting toughness, talking about crime, talking about protests, talking about rioters or looters, she's all in. But when it's about scrutinizing elite fraud, political corruption, or abuses linked to the people she's loyal to, suddenly everything gets very cautious, very technical, very forgiving. And I want to be really clear here. This is bigger than one person. Pam Bondi didn't invent this behavior. She's part of a whole ecosystem where conservative politicians talk about the rule of law while quietly undermining it for their allies. We saw it with Trump himself pushing for loyalty from the FBI director, from his attorneys general, from U.S. attorneys all across the country. We saw it with Bill Barr, mischaracterizing the Mueller report to protect Trump politically. We saw it with pressure on the Justice Department to go after perceived enemies while dismissing wrongdoing inside Trump's own orbit. When you plug Bondi into that picture, it makes sense. The Trump Foundation donation, the Trump University decision, the later role as a public attack dog and legal defender, it's all part of the same pattern: loyalty to one man over loyalty to the principle that nobody is above the law. Now, let's talk about what that does to ordinary people watching this from the outside. If you're a citizen who tried to do the right thing, you reported fraud, you filed a complaint, maybe you were one of the people conned by Trump University, what did you learn from the Bondi episode? You learned that your complaint didn't carry as much weight as a $25,000 check. You learned that the person who was supposed to fight for you decided for whatever reason not to. If you're a young lawyer or law student looking up at this, what lesson do you get? That if you want to go far, you might be better off cozying up to power than holding it accountable. That ethics are flexible if the person breaking the rules is important enough. And if you're part of the marginalized community that has historically been over-policed, over-incarcerated, and underprotected, you see exactly how blatant the double standard is. Minor offenses land people in jail for years. But when elites dance right on the edge of the law, or even cross it, we get long debates about intent and soft language about appearances instead of consequences. That's not just discouraging, it's dangerous. Because when people stop believing that the law can ever be fair, they stop trusting the institutions that hold democracy together. Courts, prosecutors, oversight committees, they all just start to look like tools for whoever's in charge. And that is exactly the environment authoritarian movements thrive in. If you can convince people that everyone is crooked, that every prosecutor is biased, that every judge is rigged, then suddenly they're more willing to accept a strong man who says, "Forget the rules, I'll just fight for you." It's the classic, "the system is broken, only I can fix it" pitch. Traub perfected that message. Pam Bondi and people like her gave him cover by bending the idea of the rule of law around him. There's another piece of this that we don't talk about enough: the way conspiracy culture, especially around things like the Epstein case, gets weaponized for politics. Over the last few years, you've seen Epstein's name tossed around as a kind of all-purpose slogan. Lists, files, secret clients, always framed as proof that the other side is full of monsters. The truth is, there are real victims, real crimes, and real questions about how much protection powerful people received. Those are legitimate issues. But what we see in the Trump MAGA ecosystem is something different: a habit of cherry-picking, exaggerating, and sensationalizing when it helps them, and then going very quiet when the facts get inconvenient or when the heat lands on their own allies. And that's where someone like Bondi, with a platform, with influence, with a reputation as a legal authority, has a responsibility to be better. To say, we are not going to turn victims into props. We are not going to dangle half-truths for clicks. We are going to treat these cases with seriousness, transparency, and care. Instead, the culture around her doesn't reward that. It rewards loyalty, spin, and staying on message. So we end up with a profoundly warped version of justice. One where accusations are blasted out when they're useful against opponents, and the brakes slam on when accountability might hit too close to home. One where "investigate everything" becomes the slogan on cable news, but the actual scrutiny of elite wrongdoing gets quietly stalled in the background. I want to bring this back to something very basic: what the job of an attorney general is supposed to be. At its core, that job is not to serve a president or a governor or a party. It's to serve the people and the Constitution. It's to make the hard calls when a powerful person wants special treatment. It's to say no to back-channel pressure. It's to recognize that the appearance of justice is almost as important as the outcome, because if the public stops believing the system is honest, the system collapses. By that standard, the Bondi Trump University Trump Foundation story is not some little footnote. It's a warning flare. It's the system telling on itself. You had a situation where ordinary people complained about fraud. A powerful politician received an improper, illegal donation from the accused. The politician's office then chose not to pursue the case in a meaningful way in that state. No one at the top truly paid a personal legal price. You don't need a law degree to see the problem. A teenager can look at that and say, "That's messed up," because it is. And in a healthier political culture, that alone would have been career-ending. At the very least, it would have made Bondi radioactive for higher office or high-profile legal roles connected to Trump. Instead, she got pulled closer in. She was rewarded with more visibility, more influence, more power. That tells you something about the values of the movement she attached herself to. It tells you that in Trump's world, the real test isn't, did you uphold the law when it was uncomfortable? It's, did you stay loyal when the heat was on? Did you protect the boss? Did you help neutralize threats? Did you attack the people asking questions? From a pro-democracy perspective, that's the exact opposite of what we should want from our legal guardians. We need people in those roles who are ready to lose a job rather than bend the rules. People who understand that their oath isn't to a person, it's to the public and the Constitution. And that brings us to the bigger picture. What accountability should look like in a moment like this? Accountability doesn't always mean prison. It doesn't always mean handcuffs. Sometimes, especially in political cases, it looks like disbarment, forced resignations, ethics sanctions, lost elections, public exposure, and a permanent stain on a resume that makes it impossible to slide quietly into the next powerful job. But right now, in the Trump-Bondi universe, we've seen the opposite. People who abuse public trust or play dangerous games with the law, landing book deals, TV contracts, think tank jobs, and coveted roles in the next campaign. They fail up, because what matters to that ecosystem is not ethical integrity, it's loyalty and usefulness. If we want to break that pattern, the answer isn't just to throw around our own conspiracy theories on the other side. It's to insist on real standards, real investigations, real consequences for everyone, including people on our team. And it's to be brutally honest about what happened in cases like the Bondi Trump Foundation story. We can say, yes, prosecutors didn't find enough to charge criminal bribery, while also saying, no, this is not acceptable. No, we are not okay with our top law enforcement officials flirting with pay-to-play politics. No, this should not be the baseline in American public life. Because if we normalize it, we lose any moral footing when we go after the next scandal. We can't demand accountability for opponents while shrugging off ethics violations for allies. That's exactly the double standard we criticize in authoritarian governments around the world. In the end, Pam Bondi is just one character in a much larger story. The story of how the Trump movement tried to turn the justice system into a personal shield and a political weapon, and how too many people with power went along with it. But she's a useful character to study, because her career touches so many of the pressure points. Money, access, selective enforcement, loyalty over law, the revolving door between public office and partisan defense. If you're tired of all of this, here's the good news. Nothing about it is inevitable. We can pass stronger ethics laws. We can enforce stricter recusal rules when officials take donations from people under investigation. We can demand transparency around decisions not to prosecute in major public cases. We can support candidates from both parties who are willing to say, no, I'm not taking that check. I'm not doing that favor. I'm not twisting the law to protect a friend. But that only happens if we stop treating stories like Bondi's as background noise. They're not background. They're the blueprint. They show us exactly how a two-tier justice system is built, one decision at a time, by people who smile for the cameras and wrap themselves in flags while quietly making sure that the rules never really apply to them and their circle. The choice we face is simple. Either we accept that as normal, or we insist that nobody, not even the most connected Trump ally in the country, sits above the law. If we care about democracy, that choice shouldn't be hard.